So who has read the document so far?
Have
Yeah, I have as well.
Okay, cool. And then who has read the discussion that's been going on in the proposals channel?
yep.
Is there an updated document, by the way, or is it still the
It's still the
just the same
same
one?
link, yeah. Still the same link.
Okay.
I changed a couple of things. So we'll just go into it. One of the things was the temperature check phase. So part of my goal with this was not to really add any more additional features or steps to our existing governance process, but rather just to have something formalized. And then the main one thing that we're adding is snapshot. So I didn't want to add any additional complexity, even if there is additional like sophistication that is desired long term. I want this one to be as simple as possible, just so that we can get it ratified. Because um, yeah, I think there needs to be some kind of ratified governance framework that exists. Otherwise, it's like you're kind of just winging it and hoping that what you're doing is okay. But yeah, so I'm just trying to create the simplest thing possible. So one of the changes was I just deleted the temperature check phase because um, basically there I don't know if we want there to be like a requirement to have a Discord poll which validates the ability for it to go to snapshot vote. Um, we already have that members of the council need to endorse a proposal for it to go to snapshot vote. Um,
Right, that's the veto opportunity.
that's the veto opportunity is that and in this case, so depending on how many council members have to endorse, but if it's one council member, that means that the council must have unanimous agreement to veto a proposal, because if any one council member endorses it, um, then it can go to snapshot. So I know you also mentioned like the existence of a majority holdings of tokens also gives like Ryan the ability to veto anyway, just with his vote. So there might not need to be too much thought put into that. But
Yeah, I agree with your comment that we can kind of take things as they go. Like if it's not a risk that we're trying to mitigate today, or it's not, doesn't pose a challenge for some time, I think we can kind of skip those unnecessary steps.
okay,
So yeah, I'm good with doing without that, without the
the
temperature check.
temperature. Okay, yeah, and I think it's still good practice. I think it's good practice to do um, a discussion in the peace ops meeting about the proposal, and then and then a discussion in the proposals channel. Um, and so it might be worth just saying that in the framework, even though it's not there's no quantitative evaluation of the temperature check that says whether or not it can go to snapshot. Um,
Got it. Okay.
does anybody think that there should be a poll that passes before going to snapshot? Okay, so yeah, we'll just keep it like that. And the next thing was quadratic. We had expressed an interest in utilizing quadratic. Um, I think the values there were to have a more egalitarian voting strategy, and that may be a long term interest, but I think that It adds complexity because of the need to simultaneously have some kind of Sybil resistance to make sure that people aren't putting their tokens into multiple different wallets and then voting with those multiple different wallets. You can actually boost your voting power substantially by doing that. So like
Good point.
Yeah,
Kind of need to work together.
right. Yeah, you kind of have to have
Sybil
both at the same time.
resistance and yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, I don't think that we want to try to iron out some kind of Sybil resistance strategy right now. So I think we should just delete quadratic from this framework and see if we can fit it into the next one.
Sounds good to me.
Cool. The number of council members that should endorse a proposal, what do we think that number should be?
Felix had his hand up. Did you want to make a comment there, Felix?
I was just going to hop in and say, if we're not doing quadratic, what are we settling on? And are we doing like a 51% majority? Or the other thing we can do is just have a higher majority, right? We could have a 65% or 75%, so that we're pretty sure that most of the community is endorsing something if it gets passed.
Yeah, that was another question.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think a super majority, like 60. Because there's so far there's been no like controversial projects. It's just like, what do we want to prioritize? So yeah, I think if something has a 41% no vote, I think that's a meaningful thing.
Okay.
I agree.
Supermajority and the number of council members that should endorse a proposal before it can go to snapshot. If it's 1, that means it's easier for all the council members because let's say Anna is, really doing a lot of the work stream stuff. That gives Anna the power to endorse proposals without necessarily needing to consult any of the other council members. But then it also is like maybe the other council members want to make sure that they're consulted for each proposal. So
I think we're good with 1 for now.
Okay.
And then I think the idea is that they can veto it after the voting happened, right? Like
Right,
veto
they
the
can
results.
override the vote. Yeah.
Awesome.
What's
Yeah, that makes sense.
What are the criteria to be a council member?
It's just council members are appointed by unanimous consent of the council or by DAO proposal. That's just what I put. I don't know if that's how we want to do it. We have 4 initial members of the council, which are Anna, Fuego, Tank, Bottoms, and Ryan.
You set a limit on council member? How many council members there should be?
I didn't set a limit. Maybe there should be a minimum.
Just to be clear, like, is that still really like a DAO though? If we're putting it into, 4 or 5 or 6 people that ultimately can control governance.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I don't think that any multi-sig with social governance is actually is actually a DAO anyway. But that's my opinion.
Right.
But you're saying is it put too much power in the hands of too few people? That the endorsement aspect of it, is that the
I think the idea of that only reaching snapshot, it has to go through a council.
Mm-hmm.
I think that, I mean, I'm not necessarily opposed to it, but I
Well,
think,
currently it's a council of one.
right.
And
Well,
I
no, but now we have that's true, but I'm thinking we at least have like a temperature check kind of period after that, right? Like we have a thumbs up, thumbs down now, where at least the community can voice their approval for something. Yeah, it's
we
true.
we could also have a removal process for a council member, which then would kind of put the, I guess, the power back into the hands of the people. So there's that element of checks and balances. Like if a large majority of like the entire community decides that a council member is not a good actor, then they could be removed, for example.
Yeah, I think that could also work. I think I'm not against the idea of having a council. I think it's more a question of not wanting, wanting everybody to still be able to put proposals in, and
Yeah.
then a council having veto power is generally, I think, a little bit of a safer route to go than to say that a council member beforehand has to endorse something. You know what I mean? But
Isn't
I'm
that the
also
same
not. I know,
thing?
Michael. It's. I think it's different if people are seeking out an endorsement before they submit a proposal. I think that's different
I
than if they
I don't
propose and then later, because a council member might not, a council member might not be able on the first impression of a proposal to accurately form an opinion. And so sometimes it helps to have that proposal in the open so that people discuss it and then make their case.
Yeah.
And then maybe a council member can say, I'm sponsoring this and it's going to a vote.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? In other words, to have that process happen before.
You're talking about a temperature check phase, which
Basically, yes.
yeah, which is I think I was torn between defining the temperature check phase and assuming the temperature check phase by not defining it. Basically assuming that exists, like we're having meetings and there's the opportunity for the community to present proposals at the meetings or in Discord and discuss them and solicit the community's approval for these ideas in order to then solicit like an endorsement from a council member. So like that would happen without using snapshot.
Yeah, that's fair. I think yeah, that's totally fair.
So yeah, and then the question is like, are there some parameters that say that has to happen in order for a snapshot to go up? That like that it had to go through a specific temperature check phase. That's kind of that was one of my stating questions. Initially, I did put, and then I was like, wasn't quite sure about it. As far as just like the complexity and the added time, because it's like if you say that a proposal must go through temperature check and it must go through this Discord process, you have to allocate a specific amount of time to that, because if you're going to say it has to do this, it doesn't mean anything unless there's a duration of time that gives the community the chance to see it. So if you say even if a council member endorses it, it must receive like a 40% approval from the community in a Discord poll before, as a temperature check, before it can go to snapshot. That's like an option. I mean, you can adjust that percentage however you want, or you could just say that like the proposal has to be posted in the proposals channel on Discord, and it has to receive like a certain number of thumbs up from the community of token holders. I don't know. Do you think that there should be some kind of requirement threshold, or just that the process should be outlined?
I'm thinking it's not an easy. There's pros and cons to both of those directions. I think where you have a minimum threshold, right? Let's say it's a temperature check, and there has to be, first of all, there has to be a certain amount of engagement. You know, I mean that in and of itself can be a threshold. Like if this doesn't get 5 votes, it's dead. The point of that is that it's in part just to see if people are interested in the proposal, but also it's to mitigate like positivity bias, because oftentimes people will feel awkward voting no, so they just won't vote, and you know that's just, I guess, part of human nature. So part of it saying, well, we know that, say we have 20 active members, and if 5 of them aren't willing to even engage with this proposal, then maybe that shows that the community is not so enthused with it. I totally see the point of that. On the flip side, you know, people get busy every day, and then you have perfect storms where 15 out of your 20 members will just be busy, and that threshold won't get met for the wrong reason. So I don't know. I mean, it's a discussion we should have, but I think it's definitely something to put a lot of thought into. I don't think, you know, anybody should just be able to put a proposal to vote kind of whenever they feel like it. I think that also in terms of security vulnerability is a problem. But you know, how much you want to gatekeep or put, you know, like raise the bar, it's a question. You know, I would say the people who are coming to Peace DAO, as evidenced by the people who have been here in the past, they're very motivated to go through any process we make because they're trying to get funds for a cause. So, I mean, we're dealing with people who are motivated and I think willing to engage with the governance process, which you know, allows us to be a little more robust in how we design governance at Peace DAO. If we make it too easy, you know, you don't want to make it so easy that people are just like, well, this place gives away money, and you know, I can just quickly put something together and try to get something out of this DAO. You know, and if you don't have temperature checks and everything goes to vote, and you don't have simple resistance strategies, you know, that's very likely to occur. And then on top of it, the community is small, it's very, very likely to occur.
Well,
It's
that's where
very hard to
the
like,
endorsement aspect comes
right,
into
right,
it. Is that, I mean, that's
yeah,
that's the primary feature or reason why the council exists, is to vet funding proposals, basically.
got it.
And maybe another strategy to mitigate for the concern that it's too centralized is we could have a separate voting on vetoed proposals where maybe like by an like supermajority the veto can be overturned. So if, for example, someone came in and like they introduced a project during peace talks and like there's a reason that, for example, someone from the council thinks that it's not good enough, they can express their reasons and do like a short paragraph explanation, and then people can vote on that whether they want to overturn the veto or if they agree with it. So then it's kind of a separate process. If people really care about it and they think it's a great project, they can engage and vote. But if they just kind of agree with the reasoning, it'll stay vetoed.
And Michael, the voter delegation would also be something that would fall on the council for people who choose to delegate votes. Or have we discussed that yet?
Meaning delegating to whatever the council determines.
Whatever, yeah. So like if somebody just wants to give money and doesn't want to vote, but they want to delegate their tokens, the council would also take on that charge.
Well,
Is that
people
fair
Yeah,
to
can
say?
people can
the
delegate
original.
to whoever they want. So if they choose to delegate to the council, then the
Got it.
council holds that. I don't know whether that would be one council unit that holds that, or just they would probably delegate to a specific person on the council.
Could I, so I'm not as familiar. I remember last time you've mentioned there are some concerns around people getting the voting tokens but not using them, and so that was kind of explained as a reason for delegation. Could you touch on that again, and like why do we need to delegate the votes? Why can someone just hold them without engaging in voting?
So yeah, that's a really good question. Like basically, let's say a project has 100,000 tokens total that they have given to contributors and that they hold themselves and everything, there's a total supply of 100,000. And in general, the amount of voter participation among DAOs is like 3% or something of the tokens, unless some of the people involved hold like a huge amount of the tokens. But in general, like if you think of it in terms of the number of people who are who own the tokens and the number of people who participate in governance, it's like really tiny amount. It's like 5. You're pretty good if you have 5 or 10% is like some of the highest voter engagement out there. So what that means is that only 10,000 at best, of your tokens, let's say sometimes like 5,000 tokens are actually being used to vote. That means that somebody can come in and buy, 6,000 tokens out of 100,000. They can just, buy a small percentage of the total supply and have like, they don't have a majority of the tokens, but because the voter engagement is low, they have a majority vote in the proposals. It makes it easy to overrun votes. So does that make sense?
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. So then by delegating the votes, you kind of make sure that there's more tokens engaged in voting, and if anything, you can kind of overrun whatever the votes were by like a few people who just bought a larger amount of tokens compared to other community members.
Yeah, and it gives people the opportunity to to be able to buy into governance and maintain control of their tokens, but to be able to invest confidence into specific people that they trust to represent their opinions. So, like, if you talk to one of your friends and they want to donate to the project, but they don't have the time to look through the proposals, like, let's say somebody has time to vote, but voting actually implies that you read the proposal and understand it. And so if somebody is honest with themselves and is like, I don't actually understand everything that this depends on to vote, but Anna does, and so I'm gonna delegate to Anna because like you have a better understanding of the needs of what's going on. So it's like, and this is just like my personal opinion about democracy and decentralization in general, is like the goal is to optimize for the total intelligence of the system. And like democracy wins against tyranny because like it involves like more minds and more perspectives in the decision-making process, which just leads to like more intelligent decisions. But that, so there's different ways of doing that. So if you can give voting power to the people who are more involved, then hopefully you get like better results, and people can choose to withdraw their delegation at any time. If they want to vote on something, they can just go and vote on it, and it automatically like removes the delegation from the person they had delegated to and votes the way that they want to. That's like how the snapshot interface works, which is pretty cool.
That's awesome. I think that's kind of the idea behind liquid democracy, right? That you can either vote directly or grant your powers to a representative that you choose, but then you can veto or withdraw. That's super awesome. And I guess like the major drawback is that what if that person votes against your interests, and then that's when the veto comes into play. So you can see if the person is voting not in a way that aligns with you, you can withdraw or veto their vote, right?
I wouldn't call that veto.
After,
Go ahead, Felix.
yeah, after the vote you can't, right? You could just choose not to delegate to them again. But I think if they cast the vote with your delegation, I don't think there's a way to undo it.
Interesting. I think it should be okay on.
Yeah. Is that once they cast the vote, Felixander, or is that after the proposal closes?
I think the point of no return is when they cast the vote.
Yeah, that makes
Anytime
that
before
makes sense.
then, if even if you delegate, what's nice with at least the snapshot delegation is I could delegate all my votes to Maiko, for instance. But then, I could just like have a little time in an afternoon and feel like voting, and I don't have to ask Maiko for my votes back. If I choose to vote, it just automatically takes it away from him. But again, only if he hasn't voted, I'm pretty sure. I'll have to double check that, but I'm pretty sure once the person votes, that's it.
Yeah, that makes sense. Any other like concerns about delegation? Um,
I think delegation's great. I think delegation's going to play a hugely important role, specifically in Peace DAO, because I think most people, if given the option of voting or delegating, will choose to delegate. And so I think where a lot of thought has to go into is that block of delegated votes might be basically an all powerful vote. Like that might consistently be the vote that determines proposals. And so that's where I think a lot of thought has to go into the how that delegation works. And
yeah,
if we're talking about if you're at a dinner and there's 30 millionaires there and they give some money to Peace DAO and they check a box that says I want my votes delegated, or they get onboarded right there and choose to delegate. I think a lot of them will just say, yeah, just put it into like a council, and a council should make that decision because they probably don't know anyone else. And so I think that's where we have to put a lot of thought into. If that council ends up just being 4 people, then the community vote kind of becomes meaningless. If most of if we're not doing quadratic, there's a good chance that the council will consistently determine all of the proposal votes, and so how do you find that parity? And I think that's something I guess we'll tackle when we get there. But I definitely see that as like I would say it's way more likely than not that will happen based on the way that fundraising is and will be occurring.
yeah, and I agree that there's a danger there, and I also feel like it actually might really help the process. I kind of feel like it's the right balance of like executive decision making and decentralized like democratic decision making because you can have like if people can gain more and more confidence, they can have the power to just like sign off on things and make stuff happen in a friction minimized like way. But as soon as people, as soon as people don't want them making their decisions anymore, they can withdraw that very easily. I think that the danger would be if people don't know how to use the interface, if people don't know how to withdraw their delegation. And I would say if we're going to do a thing where like check this box and we'll just do it for you, we need to commit to some sort of white glove service where those people can email somebody and say, I want to withdraw my delegation and have that actually get done.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely, I agree.
yeah. Um, the other thing is like the council basically what I put in here, and we can just easily delete this without causing any issues to the rest of the proposal, but is that the council has the authority to delegate the reserve tokens that are gathered by Juicebox. So that number equates to 34.5% of all tokens minted are reserved at the peace.mdao or peace.movedao.eth treasury address. So I guess that delegation would have to happen through the Gnosis multisig, since the Gnosis is holding that treasury. And so if I don't know, I'm a little bit on the fence about that one as to whether or not it should exist. What I was thinking is that the council would be able to like witness like high value community members and be able to delegate voting power to members of the community that are actively involved in order to distribute like voting power and or delegate to themselves and basically give the council members that voting power. So 34.5% of all tokens represented is like basically gonna outweigh any of the community's votes because of the voter engagement trend. So that's basically like a veto power right there, is the fact that whether or not the council can actually vote with the reserve token. So a lot of governance frameworks actually state that the DAO itself, or no one in the DAO, is allowed to use the reserve tokens to vote on proposals because of that, because it basically just gives ultimate power to whoever is able to control those tokens. So I was wondering what you guys
To your
thought about
point, that is an opportunity to then give more distributed voting power. So DAO is a little, it's different, right? Because there's kind of a community vetting component that I think could emerge in a big way. So, obviously Anna's organization, Help UA Now, is kind of living and breathing this, which, that's a lot of work, both, cognitively and just emotionally to go through. So, but there's going to be, I see if this, just kind of continues to blossom, there's going to be more communities, more individuals like that, where they don't necessarily, have a horse in the race, so to speak, but are intimately involved in what's going on and, stepping up to help. And there's that, or there's just people that we know and respect and want to hear their opinions that we can just give tokens to get involved in our community. And so, yeah, I just see that as, but right now, on the flip side, Anna is intimately involved with every proposal for the most part, if they're coming from Help UA Now. And she's kind of the single source of truth, everything related to these proposals. So until we have someone else that is also at that level, I think it just makes a lot of sense to, I would happily delegate my votes to her because she's just so much more involved on a day-to-day. So I just kind of see this as another kind of topic that is, maybe changes need to be made when kind of the facts change or the dynamics change.
Yeah, and like you delegating your tokens to Anna is different from the DAO delegating the DAO reserve tokens to Anna, which is like a lot more substantial because it's just like it's a much more substantial portion of the treasury that would out. I would say maybe in this case, the best thing to do would be, if we want to like honorifically involve people into the DAO, we should actually send them the tokens. It like so that if we want them to feel like they received something as a reward, in a way, or in any kind of in that kind of a sense, like I think we should actually send them the tokens rather than delegate the voting power of the tokens to them. And maybe what I would change it to is that the council members can choose to send the reserve tokens to anyone, but they cannot use those tokens for voting. Unless you want them to be able to use the tokens for voting.
I think they should be able to use them for voting. I mean, it's sort of just an anti-dilution thing, right?
Well, yeah, it gives the council like essentially like absolute, voting power over anything, which it is what it is. Yeah. Like, I think that, people want to do that, like what Tank was talking about, when it's like their personal project that's not really intended to be like a distributed project. And I'd say like Peace DAO is somewhere in the middle. Like, it doesn't need to be 100% decentralized, but it also wants to inspire confidence in people who are donating to it, that it's like it's different from the rest in its transparency and involvement of like, okay, we're saying it's like it's a donor it's a donor advised fund. I guess that means the donors are advising, but the donors don't necessarily have like full control, which is fine, and definitely can be a good starting point. I guess maybe one of the questions is like, how decentralized does Peace DAO want to get? Let's say we were able to just come up with like a perfect framework, and after like 5 years, and there's like lots of funding and there's lots of projects, what's the ideal, and without assuming that it just should be decentralized just because that's like a buzzword, that would be something to think about, and not necessarily something that we're going to be able to answer at this meeting. And then this governance framework doesn't have to live up to that standard either. But I did write at the top, future iterations may introduce further sophistication for the purpose of progressive decentralization.
But there's only like 2% per council member that's allocated to them of the reserve.
There's 69% allocated to peace.movedao.eth. And that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking
Basically,
about
that 69%, which is a reserve rate that Ryan or whoever set it up put, is I mean, that really is the veto power. Like,
and sorry, it's 69% of half. Like
half. Okay.
Yeah, half tokens are reserved, half tokens go to the donor, and then 69% of the half of the reserved go into the DAO treasury.
So where does the 31%?
That's where I was saying 34.5.
But where does the 31% of that other half go?
Half goes
that makes
to
sense.
half goes
Half
to
goes to the donor.
Mm-hmm. Half goes to
right?
the reserve, and 69% of the you're saying yeah, that 31%. So that gets split up between a handful of different people. So
got it. Okay,
I don't know.
I understand.
I don't know what the arrangements were that for that split, but it's
okay.
like Tank and Fuego and Ryan and some other people.
Yeah, that's something that you see sometimes in Juicebox. In order to reward contributors, with the understanding that contributors are working for a place, they're getting sometimes paid, let's say in ETH, but they're not necessarily using that ETH to buy their own token. So what you can do is you could say, well, our core team, they do deserve to have voting power and get more tokens over time, but they're also not in the donor category. So some places will basically do like what Peace DAO did, where a certain amount goes into a treasury, and then another amount gets split up between kind of a core team of people who are working hard, and that's almost like part of It's almost like a part of their
Yeah.
acknowledgement of their work is that they get the token. So that's what's going on there.
I'm just assuming that's the case here.
Yeah.
And 15% goes to MoveDAO, which is like which is actually 7.5% of the total token, right? So that's like the Move tribute portion, and then we've got Ryan, Party Pants, Pillow Fight Club, DAO Law Firm, Jimmy, ETH World, Natasha, and Tank Bottoms, and one address that doesn't have an ENS on. Those are all each 2% to each one of those individuals. But the question is, should Peace DAO use that 34.5% of its own reserve tokens for voting? And then how would it do that? Is it allowed to do that with the consent of do the council members have that power to vote using the 34.5% of reserve peace tokens?
Would that be meant to address veto power, or what? Or would that just be a separate discussion? Because the 34.5% wouldn't even be veto power in and of itself, right?
Well, it would, because of limited voter participation, right? Like if 100% of the tokens are being used to vote, then 35% of tokens doesn't have majority. But if 6% of the tokens are being used to vote, which is mostly the case, then 99% of the time, like 35% of the tokens is going to have majority rule over the tokens that are actually participating in a proposal.
So if those tokens are meant for governance and governance only, then why would it make sense to have those tokens not be able to vote? And if we don't want them to vote, then why wouldn't we reconfigure the treasury?
Like, why do they exist if we didn't want the DAO to use them to vote?
Yeah, like it seems like if we're arguing against them being able to vote with those, what we should actually be doing is reconfiguring that strategy versus putting in something into governance.
Yeah.
Well,
or burning them.
I would say, projects that do this and that have in their governance like that the DAO is not allowed to use those to vote. They have the reserves so that they can continue to reward contributors with those tokens. Like it's like it's a little treasury reserve that you just minted for yourself. And I mean, I think that's like a beautiful thing about DAOs, is that you can like mint this magic money that may or may not actually be worth anything, but you can use it as like incentives for contributors. And for that reason, I think it's worth having like a really healthy portion of tokens in the DAO's reserve, so that the DAO can have like plenty of those to play with, and just to set up fun bounties and like community participation stuff. And so then you can do that, and you can say that the council is allowed to send those tokens to whoever they want, but they're not allowed to use them to vote with. And like functionally, in order to vote with those tokens, they would actually have to have like 3 out of 5 multi-sig signers actually use Gnosis interface to go to Snapshot and like sign off on the transaction to vote with those tokens. So it'd be like a significant like action to actually do, and it gives it gives the council like a lot of power, which I know that like was actually desired. Like that was one of the parameters that was talked about, was like wanting the council to be able to veto anything. And I think that power should be represented by the fact that like Ryan has actually given the majority of the money to the project in the first place, and that is represented by the fact that he was given tokens in return for that. So to the extent that like many other donors actually come to the scene and also have like their own vested interests in the project and receive tokens, and like Ryan's share of voting power gets diluted by like all these other investors who have also invested like equal or greater portions at that point, I think it's fair to distribute that power and like not have this sort of central veto power existing. Whereas like
I think that makes sense, but just curious, what do other DAOs do with their treasury of governance tokens? Are they usually generally not, is the multi-sig generally not able to vote using those tokens that it holds?
yeah, it's like stated in the framework that the multi-sig's like not allowed to vote using those tokens, and
Right.
they
Okay,
use
I think
those
that makes sense.
tokens. Yeah, they put those tokens up on like their bounty programs and contributor compensation and stuff.
Did we have anything? I don't remember reading anything, and I don't want to bring us too off topic, but like, was that anything that was stated in the move governance docs that Tank sent out?
We don't have a lot of like configuration parameters defined, as far as I know, like for the move token. Like that's something that I'm really interested in learning more about, or working on defining, is like what our tokenomics are actually gonna be.
I just meant around if the whatever move tokens are held in the endowment, can they be voted with the multi-sig? But I don't want to get us off topic.
Like all the mapes.
Well, mainly talking about move, whenever that. But I guess I don't know if you've even addressed. Or yeah, I guess we were gonna. I don't know. I don't want to get us off topic. That's a
Yeah.
whole complex.
Yeah. I mean, as far as I know, that hasn't been addressed yet. But I could have missed something. Okay. So is everybody okay with not saying that the council may choose to delegate voting rights from peace token reserves, but saying that the council may choose to send peace tokens from the reserves to contributors?
Yeah, I'm good with that.
Okay. And should decisions like that be what's the process for the council to decide on that? Does there need to be a formal, transparent vote that takes place? Should it just be verbal? Does it need to be unanimous? Is it 3 out of 4? Like, is it like super majority, or is it? What do you think?
I think, I mean, on my end, it might be. I mean, to be honest, it might be okay that there's community input on this question. In other words, that we don't quite know, and we'll put up a proposal on it. Because I think how that would look, distributing. I mean, I'm not sure. I guess we could make that decision and just say, if it's something that's just an internal decision, then it's a veto power, which you could say this could get, because then you could just delegate it to somebody and it's a veto power.
I would say, yeah, that's true. Maybe a solution to that would be so in here is an operational budget, and it's saying that 5% of assets are sent to an operational budget wallet, and that wallet is just fully controlled at the discretion of the council for day-to-day expenses and things that they want to be able to do without a proposal. So by standard, 5% is given. If that operational treasury needs to be funded more, then you have to pass a proposal to transact from the endowment into the operational budget, and then from there the council can just transact at will from the unless it was like specifically defined in the proposal, like what that money is going to be used for, then they have to use it for that thing. But I would say maybe we can also include 5% of the token reserves into the operational wallet, and then council members like just have discretion over, sending those tokens from the operational budget. And if for further like budget proposals, can ask for more of the peace token into the operational wallet.
Yeah, that could work. I mean, I think we can go with that, and then, I mean, we'll see it. I'll sit with it for a few days, and the rest of us, when it's written down, I think we're gonna have to do a final pass over all this anyway, right? And to really look at it under a microscope.
Yeah, I mean, like that's the kind of the idea of this meeting, is to be that final pass. Because it's pretty thorough. It's like pretty thorough as it is, or like in general. I think there's just like these handful of things that we finalize.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm adjusting my headset, but I can answer that. I think like, okay.
Is a juice box term, then people could essentially burn their tokens for some amount of the treasury.
Oh.
But explicitly, legally, they don't represent any money. Exact that way, but that's kind of aside from the point.
On the secondary market, people can decide that it's worth something. But yeah, there's no inherent.
That's what they've done for Constitution DAO, right?
That's right. Yep. But they had a concrete funding target, and so there was overflow. Is that right, Felix?
I mean, I know that they put it in outside of Juicebox. I don't know what the Juicebox parameters was, but I know that people was definitely put on a lot of dexes in secondary markets.
Yeah, I mean, in general, like a token, the only thing that ever gives a token value is like the free market and whether or not anyone is willing to buy it from you. The Juicebox overflow function kind of changes that a little bit, but legally, we're supposed to say that the token does not represent any monetary value. Otherwise, it could be considered a security. And so that's like an important thing to note, is that like if you're rewarding contributors with the token, you're not like compensating them. You're just kind of giving them a collectible thing for fun, even though other people might be willing to buy it from them on the free market, which is what might happen if there's liquidity set up for that token. But with no liquidity, you can't.
Yeah, I think from a
Go ahead.
I think from a legal standpoint, it's just about there's nothing like hard coded in the protocol, the smart contracts that allow for profit to be distributed on the platform. So it doesn't allow for it doesn't allow for you to really make money on the platform if you decide to transact outside of the platform. That's where that profit opportunity is.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I just remember that for Constitution DAO, they allowed you to transfer it to your MetaMask wallet in like ERC20 form, and then people went to secondary markets and the trading started. So since we don't have that, like that is not an issue.
Well, essentially, you can do that now with peace tokens, correct?
Yeah, like somebody could go to Uniswap and set up a pool, and people can start trading it.
Yeah.
We gotta hop off for another call.
Okay. Oh yeah, we got. Okay, I think I pretty much have what I need. We have
Can you draft those?
What's that?
Can you put those changes into a document and just pop it into like the chat for Peace DAO?
Yeah.
And then we'll be able to read it over. But
it's in the proposals channel, and it's a
Perfect.
live document. So I'm currently I'm adding suggestions with what we just talked about. So it's pretty much up to date right now.
Oh, excellent. Okay.
Yeah, and it has some comments in there and stuff. So all of that stuff, and I think it's about ready. Try to keep your eyes peeled to the proposals channel, because if I have any other questions, I'll need some feedback in there. Otherwise, we'll do like a Discord poll and then push it to Snapshot.
Awesome. Okay, thank you, Michael. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
It was a really productive meeting.
Yeah, this was great.
All right, I'm gonna hop
You
off.
guys.
You guys take care.
Thanks,
guys.
Alexander.